Guys, welcome to the TRM show. My name is Mathew Park. Looking forward to an electrifying podcast for you today, guys, with a guy that I just met recently over in the Cayman Islands because his wonderful wife actually has been a part of our wonderful program for 4 years. I've heard about this guy. I've heard about him through Jamie and, of course, our coaching calls. I met him in person 3 weeks ago in Cayman and over in Paradise, and this guy definitely didn't disappoint. He actually was just a awesome human being to talk with and digest with and learn about his backstory in business of over 3 decades. He has a company called FERRO Environmental Solutions, and he's been involved in business in multiple layers, which you'll hear today on the call today, guys, as we dive deep with Pete and hear his story, his spatula story, his wisdom. And we had deep dives in core values at the interview, or actually at the event over in Cayman. Looking forward, of course, to diving more with Peter on that as well, too. So Peter, it's a pleasure, my friend, to have you on our show, buddy.
Thank you, man. Great to see you again. I enjoyed my participation in your event at Cayman there. Even though I was only there as a trophy husband, what are you going to do? I did. I really enjoyed it. You've got a great group. It was a great event. There was an energy. There was an energy in that room, man, and I enjoyed just listening a lot more than speaking, which is counterintuitive to me normally. So, but yeah, some great conversations, some great experience sharing, some great wisdom right around the table, man. You did a fantastic job down there. You should be proud of yourself.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that very much, buddy. And it was honestly a pleasure to have a chance over dinner twice to chat with you, deep dive on your story and your background and your travel adventures all across the world. The core values that we talked about that you took me on this journey on, that I honestly was inspired to this podcast because of you. And the TRM upgrade in values was because of our conversations, thankfully. So I'm really grateful for that connection with you, Pete, that way.
Absolutely. Happy to have participated in whatever way I could. So I'm flattered that you asked me to come on, and happy to walk through whatever you'd like over the next little while here.
Let's definitely get things going. I think, Pete, first with the I'm hearing the world famous spatula story that you shared briefly prior to this, and I look forward to hearing it again and sharing with our members. And I know Jamie mentioned about the story, so make sure that we have this time to record it live, Pete.
Yeah, awesome. I will. I'm going to try and condense it a little bit. So the spatula story. I mean, this is my. I'm a big Marvel fan, so I look at things like origin stories, and whether you're a villain or a hero, there's always a story, right? Every entrepreneur I know that's had any measure of success, whatever that means to them, has a story about adversity or failure, usually many stories, not just one. But I remember, and again, to make a long story short, I had just sold the first company I had ever started, co-founded with a friend of mine called Imagenius 3D Studios. We were one of the very first people in North America, and potentially globally, now that I look back at it, that were going after an architectural virtual reality market. So we didn't do animation in the sense of Pixar, animation in the sense of building virtual 3D homes so that builders and condo developers and all this could pre-sell, right? That was our $1 million idea. Anyway, got this thing off the ground, co-founded it with a friend. We were a couple years in, and had different ideas on how things should go, as strong personalities often do, and decided that we're just going to go our own separate ways. And he ended up buying my shares and sold them off and went off and did other things. So, I had all this money at the time. I thought I was rich. I think it was like 50 grand. I don't remember the exact number, but it wasn't more than that. That I know for sure. I had all this money, and I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? And it dawned on me that I just always wanted to own a bar. I'd never been a busboy before. I'd never served the table in a professional manner. But I was like, I love this idea. Maybe I just watched too many episodes of Cheers or something back in the day. So I open this bar. I go out looking. I open a bar, and it was a cigar bar, actually, which I don't know if I mentioned that before. Back in the day, this was when Cigar Aficionado had just hit. Cigars were a big deal. You could still smoke inside at that point. That's how long ago. So this was early 2000, I guess, late 90s, I guess. Late 90s is when it opened, shut down, early 2000s.
Okay.
And anyway, I'd managed to get about 3 years out of it. I literally muddled along, just figuring it out as I went, as entrepreneurs typically do, right? I mean, what's the definition? An entrepreneur is someone that is willing to throw themselves off a cliff and then learn how to build a plane on the way down, right? Or a parachute on the way down. And this is what I did, and I stuck it out. And again, it cost me everything. I did have to close it. I wasn't great at running the bar, but I was pretty good at throwing a good party. So that's what kept it going. Yeah. We had to do some pretty interesting stuff to stay afloat, but we did and made it work. And some of the stuff I'll have to tell you offline. I just remembered this, and it was hilarious. So, I mean, the place cost me everything. You have to imagine that, you're there for pre-prep by probably, 10 a.m. We're opening at noon, and then you don't close. Last call is 2 a.m.
Wow.
And, by the time everybody has their last call and drinks and gets out, it's, 3 or 4 at least. And then I ended up living above this bar that I owned, right?
Yeah.
It's this crappy little apartment. Anyway, make a long story short, I have to fold the place. I've lost it all. I was separated. I was going through a divorce. At the time, I had this beautiful little daughter, and I had the great and powerful Jamie was through this place. And I'm like, I'm beside myself. I'm like, geez, man, I've had to shut this place down. I'm in this crappy little apartment above the bar that I used to own, which is now back up and running with other people trying to make a go of it, doing what they did.
Yeah.
So I can hear everything. I mean, the floor of my my crappy little apartment is the ceiling of the bar below me that I built, right? Yeah. That was tough. So I'm listening to this. I've lost it all. I'm probably about $250,000 in debt, maybe a hair less than that. I've got, I can't remember. I think it was, less than $100 in my pocket, whatever it was. And I'm trying to figure this out. I'm like, man, you've really done it this time. And, but Jamie was sticking with me. I had this beautiful little girl. I'm trying to figure things out, and I'm throwing myself a little pity party upstairs, right? I mean, oh man, what did you do? And blah, blah, blah. Not only you lost all that money, you're getting a divorce. We've had to sell the house, and like, it was just craziness. And I'm literally borderline depressed, if I was not actually depressed at the time. And one morning, I making some eggs in this little kitchen. So to give a sense of space, there was, there was the stove, which would be right in front of me. And then there was a small bit of counter, and then the door to get into the apartment. You open the door and literally it swung open, and there was just enough space. It missed the counter as you were walking in. There's a bathroom, living space. There you have it. And I'm like, and it's a pretty crappy place. Like, if I can find a picture of it, I should send it to you after this so you can make it.
I'm actually curious.
I actually kept a picture of it to remind. Every so often I try and look it up. I'm hoping I can find it for you, because it is a pretty crappy little place. Wow. Anyway, I'm making some eggs this morning, and I like my eggs over medium. And so I open this drawer, and I'm going through, and I'm trying to find the spatula to flip my eggs so I can have my eggs the way I want them. And I realize I go through and I realize I don't even have a spatula anymore, so I can flip my eggs and have them the way I want them.
Wow.
And that was just the low. My heart kind of sank a little bit, and I'm like, head in your hands, like, what have you done, man? Like, you don't even have a spatula. How are you going to make this work, right? How are you going to take care of this beautiful little girl? And in my mind, I'm thinking, thank God for Jamie, but in my mind, I'm like, what am I gonna? How am I gonna
Wow.
do?
That's
How am I going to get off? How am I going to get out of here? Right?
Yeah.
How am I going to pick myself up? Right? And I remember it was literally that moment. I'm standing there, my eggs in this frying pan, and I'm looking out the window in the door that looked outside into this gravel parking lot.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I said, that's enough. Like, I literally said to myself, Ferrante, come on, Ferrante, you're better than this. You're better than this. Give your head a shake, stop with the pity party, and, let's effing go. Like, literally, let's go. Enough. Right. And literally that was the moment I said, okay, I sat down and I'm like, okay, well,
Dude.
what do I have to work with here? It's not much, but I had myself, I had my reputation. Right. So I came originally, so before the 3D animation company, I came from a property and a facility management, project management background. Had a lot of connections. I had a great name in the industry. I'd like to believe I was looked at as someone with integrity and just a unstoppable mindset. Right. I'm like, well, okay, how do I leverage this? And I turned around and said, okay, well, I've got this, I've got that. I know project management. I know I still have a lot of connections. And it's funny when you put stuff out into the world as to what you want, like literally say it out loud in today's age, post it, talk to people. A friend of mine who owned a construction company at the time calls me up and he says, hey man, I want to help you out here. He's like, I'll tell you what we're going to do. He goes, I know what you can do. He goes, he had this company at the time. He says, I'll tell you what, you go out and I know you can sell, which was always my strong suit, relationship building, and business development, which I've now combined, but that's a separate talk. He says, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. He goes, you go out, get the work. He goes, you run the job, bring it in. We'll do the work. His guys will do the work. We'll handle the admin, the invoicing, the whole 9 yards. He goes, and we'll split the profit 50-50.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, okay, yeah. I'm like, sure, I can do that. Right.
Wow.
So I do that. And it was funny. And I never asked him for a draw. I never asked him, which in hindsight, once I kind of got off the ground, I should have. But here's the magic there is he came to me probably a month in and he knew the situation I was in. Like I'm scrambling, right? Like I'm scrambling, and came to me and he's like, hey man, he goes, I can see you're bringing opportunity in, you're getting getting stuff done. I'm just going to give you some, he goes, I know you need it. I'm going to give you some money up front as an advance on what I know you're going to end up earning on here. And we did. And listen, by the end of that first year, I did $500,000 in sales.
Wow.
I was starting to get back on my feet. I managed to get out of that crappy little apartment.
Yeah.
It took almost a year. And then went to rented a small home outside of town. And, again, but this was all through friends. This was through that connection. It was through, that reputation that I built and the resources I had available at the time. So did that. And the one thing that I did not do, which perhaps a better businessman would have, I refused. I would not declare bankruptcy. So, yeah. And there's a story there too. I was certainly in a position that I should have. I owed a lot more than I had, that's for sure. But I knew there was a lot of small businesses that I had made promises to. And
Wow.
I didn't want them to feel that I could not pay them
Yeah.
immediately, but I knew if I went under, I could throw my hands up and walk away. But then there was people that had vouched for me, specifically with the bank in one case. So I can't do that. So I went to the bank, made a deal with them to slowly pay it off. If they promised not to go after the guarantors on the loan, I said I will pay it off. I said just give me a payment plan and I'll get it done. So I did. They charged me certainly a fair amount of interest, but got it done. And then real quick, that story, I was really embarrassed. I was very embarrassed. And I remember there was one guy in a shopping mall near where the bar was, in the same town that the bar was, that owned he was a tobacconist, right? Had, sold cigars, cigarettes, the whole 9 yards, but he had this inventory, and I was buying cigars off him.
Wow.
And I probably owed him, it wasn't a ton of money, but he was one of the last people.
Okay.
That I had to pay the bank first.
Yeah.
But I remember every time I went through the mall, I felt like I had this shame that I was like, I had to, I was like, I tried to avoid going by where his store was.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to say, hey man, you owe me like $3,000 or whatever it was. But, by the end of year 2, I remember I did okay. I was back on my feet, so to speak.
Yeah.
I was paying off this loan. I had a little bit of money all of a sudden. Was doing relatively well, all things considered, like relatively speaking. And I put together, I saved up a little bit of cash each month. And when I had the $3,000, I remember walking back into this guy's store, literally just out of the blue one day. I walk into his store and I said, hey man, I'm really sorry. I said, I'm really sorry. And I probably should have reached out a lot sooner. I'm not even finished. And this guy comes over and gives me a big hug. And I'm like, hey, and he's like, where have you been? And like, I said, I had to get my crap together, man. I had to get back on my feet. And he's like, I was worried about you. He goes, I knew you had to close the bar and blah, blah, blah. All that. And I said, I know, man. I said, I'm sorry about the money. He goes, the money? He goes, dude, I wrote that off, a year ago. He goes, I wrote that off. He goes, I was much more concerned about you than I was about the couple of grand that you owed me. But I gave him this envelope with this, and just said, hey, I really am sorry. I didn't mean to do this. And, I still hope we're friends. And he's like, he wouldn't take the money. And I said, you have to take this money. And he goes, I cannot take that money. He goes, I can only imagine what you've been through. I can't take that. And I said, listen, you're not taking the money then because you want to. I need you to take this money because it's important to me that you take this money.
Wow.
I said, I don't care what you do with it. I said, go buy your wife something nice, go out, have a dinner. I don't know, buy the best cigar you've ever had in your life and smoke it. And, I said, but I really need you to take this money. And he finally agreed, and took the money and now he's no longer in business. I think he retired, to be honest, but yeah, walked away. And there was a lesson there too. It's like, man, if you have the right people around you, it was really it was like a weight being lifted. It was some empowerment there. It was like, this guy still thinks you're a good person. You whether I came back or not. I did the same thing with a guy that did some work in the, on the equipment for us. And I look back and I can look back at it with a clear conscience now that not a single person didn't get repaid. Right. And it was important to me, right? One of those, getting into the whole core values thing about, well, who am I? Right.
Yeah.
What do I want my legacy to be? And again, I wasn't thinking that at the time, but looking back at it, it was so important to me that I wasn't looked at as a deadbeat or a cheat or whatever you want to call it. And that helped form, some of the core values that I live by personally, and my company.
What are the core values you have right now, Pete? Like what are your, because you have, was it 4 or 5 core values?
Personal or business? They're different.
Well, personal and the business.
They're similar, but they're different.
Yeah. Personal
is, and again, we'll get into this because wealth is one, freedom, adventure, and family, right? So, and the wealth typically, I mean, I can even remove the wealth and just say freedom, because wealth isn't about things. It's about being able to do what I want to do, how I want to do it, when I want to do it, right? That's the goal, right? So when you're talking about a core value, to me, I pressed back on a couple of people at the event, because there was one of your gentlemen that I won't name, and unless he says it's okay, was talking about wanting a certain dollar figure, as his end game. And I use my, at the time, I call it laser listening. It's just kind of staying quiet and listening to what they're talking about. And I asked him if I could challenge him on that. And he said, sure. And I said, so why the number? And he goes, I said, that's not your goal. And he said, yes, it is. I said, no, it's not. And we went back and forth on it a little bit, and I just kept asking questions. And typically, if you ask why often enough, you'll get to the underlying reasons as to why X is important to you. And it came down to, well, he wanted to be able to do this.
Right.
And he required that amount of money in order to execute on his, call it BHAG, which is a gazelle's term.
Yeah.
Big, hairy, audacious goal. Right.
Yeah.
He talked about this, and I said, okay. I said, so is your goal the money, or is your goal to do this thing that you want to do? And it was funny because I remember watching him, and he sat back for a second. He was like, shit. and was like, and did a deeper, I don't know where he ended up. I haven't had a chance to talk to him since, but I think at the time he had said, I need to do a little deeper dive here. And I said, I really would encourage you to. Wow. Because a monetary goal does not carry the same weight as a specific goal. What do you want to do? Why do you need X? Right. And we talked about table stakes for a while there too. And I'm like, well, look, making money should be a default, right? If you're never going to get to do what it is you want to do. If the business doesn't make money, it's not going to stay in business, and you're done. Right. Yeah,
so exactly.
Or open a nonprofit, right? And just do your thing, right? And that's cool too. That's a different type of success. But it is, I have yet to challenge anybody that has a number as a core value. The number's not the reason. Number's not the reason. Number's not the reason you exist. The number's not the reason why the company exists. It's a tool. Money is nothing more than a wrench or a hammer, right? It allows you to do something. Right? So saying that your goal is the hammer, when really what it is you want to do is drive a nail. What's the goal? To get a hammer?
It's true, Pete.
Right?
Wow.
So yeah, I'd be really curious, now that I mentioned it, to circle back on that and see if he did do a deeper dive and where he ended up on it.
Yeah. That's intriguing, man. Definitely. I think I might have an idea of who that might be, but we'll circle back after the call.
Yeah, for sure. I would love to know if he did that deeper dive and where he ended up on it. Right. Well, it was a big number. It was a big number. And I'm like, okay, I get it. I get you want to make a big number. Why do you want to make that number?
And this is, I think, is why when I first had my deep dive talk with you over at Rackham's in Cayman, we were at that outdoor facility we were having dinner at. And Jamie was there playing with Lily, and I was talking to you, and you were asking me questions, and I was asking questions about, your backstory and your business and learning more about all the cool stuff that you're doing. And then you started asking me about core values, and I was like, I shared mine. And you said to me, you said, yeah, I forget how you termed it exactly, but you're like, 3 of, these 2 are like table stake values or whatever you called them.
Yeah. You mentioned a couple. I can't remember one was money, but the one that I remember specifically, we kind of did a deeper dive into was, I think you said integrity.
Correct.
Right. And integrity is a great thing. Don't get me wrong. But it was like, well, if you go to, pick a company and go on their website or ask their, the team members there, what the core values, teamwork, service, integrity. I'm like, you're playing too small, man. You're playing small. Integrity is a great core value, but it's part of something else. If you don't have integrity and you don't have, you're not servicing your clients, that's table stakes, right? That's table stakes. What really drives you? And again, in my corporate core values, those things, the things we just talked about, are part of it. But it's the phrasing, getting a grouping of words,
Right.
not words. Sorry, getting a grouping of thoughts and feelings and actions that you can then, you've got, all these. There's an exercise that I can do. Where you've got, hundreds of words and you're kind of picking some, or you're writing some of your own. And then when you've got, let's say you've got 50 words there that mean something to you, right? It's then, okay, well, which ones can I start to clump together? And clump those together, and then do it again. And then ask yourself those why questions. Why is this important to me? And you'll be able to start pooling words into actual values, because until you've put them all together into a cohesive, intelligible, is that even a word? I don't know, but thought and value, they're just words until they become a value, and the value can have a whole bunch of things in behind it. So we have, so service is obviously one that any of my companies have, but the value is wow.
Yeah. Okay.
It's like, wow. It's like, wow. We want it. And then when it says wow, what are all those things? We want to deliver a wow experience every time, above and beyond. We want to, and how do you deliver that? What are the things? Does integrity come into that? Does professionalism come into that? Right? Those driving words that create the wow.
Yeah.
Right? Win is a huge one for us, right? And it was funny because that was one that so every so often we revisit them, and sometimes stuff will come in and out of play. But win was one that we added. The word it's just win. And it was like, well, there's a difference between playing to win and playing not to lose. And typically this is after you've been in business a while, right? And you've made a little bit of money maybe, or you've reached, you've reached whatever your metric for success is. And it's like, oh, geez, I really don't want to lose this now. So you're being a little more cautious. Maybe you're not delivering to a certain level because you're worried about losing where you've got. Whereas that's playing not to lose.
Right.
We always think, and my team was like, no, we play to win. We love winning. We don't like winning. We love winning. And it drives us. We do the extra to get to our goals, right? We look outside of the norm. We create deep relationships, right? We treat our partners as friends, and we don't let friends down. That's win, right? There's, it's all about the team, of course, and I, there's all the stuff that comes in behind that. So it's really a lot more about doing a deeper dive and getting a feeling when you come up with a word, right? Or a phrase, or whatever it is that you actually, you list as that core value, right? Entrepreneurial spirit is another one with FERRO, right? And it's like, well, what does that mean? Entrepreneurial spirit, I can tell you, is that failures are nothing more than lessons and speed bumps, right? They don't stop us. Blameless autopsy is part of entrepreneurial spirit. What does that mean? So, well, we try not to make the same mistake twice. We have a group session. We attack the problem, not the person, right? Unless it was something, and if it was something where someone acted without integrity or something, then I would deal with that individual on that, and they probably wouldn't be around very long. But it's going through, over, under, around obstacles, creative solutions. That's important to the way we do business.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah. But that's all, I mean, that's all part of the top tier of the strategy pyramid too, right? Like if any, the core values are so important because they tell us how we're going to act to get to our why, which is the top of a strategy pyramid. Well, why are we doing what we do? Right? Why? What's the point? And with FERRO's, our why is we want to do some good and enjoy the ride.
I love that.
And there's a reason, there's obviously language and stories that go into that, right? So you've got that do some good, enjoy the ride. We've got our core values, and then we have the vision below that, and that creates the top tier of a strategy pyramid, right? So the mission, the why is do some good, enjoy the ride. The core values, I just explained most of them, and then the vision is, and again, very simply, it's happy team, happy clients, happy company, right?
The thing with that is it's so simple, and obviously kind of rides into like us sharing now on like when we had our conversation. You asked me a journal last week about, well, why are these 5 core values the ones you want to have? And you gave a really almost like explanation of like why, your personal and your business ones are the reason that they are, which is very thoughtful, invoking deep purpose behind what those are. You can hear it in your bones. You can feel it, right?
Yeah.
I'd love to kind of go over the 5 and kind of dive with you with the time that we have left, obviously, and kind of dive into those.
Yeah, let's do it.
Share with you live, almost as the first time, guys, sharing what I'm sharing with Peter now. It's kind of like a very vulnerable share, because he asked me, so Matt, what's your 5 and tell me why? So let's do it on a podcast live.
You want my 5, or you want me to talk to you about your 5?
My 5. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay. So list me the 5.
Okay. So the first one that once Pete gave me the, what are your, out of the 5 I shared originally on the table in Cayman, I said, just before was integrity, growth, passion, esprit de corps, and impact. And you already had 3 that were like, those are tables, right? So, but then the 2 I kept was esprit de corps and impact. Now the new 5 I've revamped are heart-centered, impact, elevate, esprit de corps and connection. Okay? That's the 5. I actually have little like words and phrases I've kind of made notes on underneath each of the 5.
Right.
So I'm looking forward to sharing with you kind of what I've reflected on.
Right? Yeah. I love it. And I'm not sure if esprit de corps was one of the ones that I pushed back too hard on, because I like that it's there's a thought. It's a thought there. It's not just teamwork or whatever it is. So let's leave esprit de corps and we'll leave that to last, because I actually really like that. But so talk to me about what does heart-centered mean?
Okay.
If I'm a client and I'm looking at your site, or I'm talking to you and I'm trying to say, well, wow, I like heart-centered, right? It evokes a question.
Yes.
Right. Or a feeling or an idea. When I think of heart-centered, I'm like, okay, well, it's important to you. And again, to steal from mine, is that you're doing some good here, that you're coming from a place of integrity. Right. So talk to me about that.
The first thing is it's client and people first mindset. So heart-centered is client and people first mindset, not self or me mentality mindset.
Right.
Heart-centered is also about what I came to: authentic relationship, authenticity in who you are as a human. So we you coming in as a client or as a team member or whatever, you're authentic, you're you're being you. Integrity and transparency were also a part of that I wrote down, and transparency in who you are and transparency with your communication is heart-centered. I also put down sustainability. So meaning that when we grow our businesses, heart-centered means you're consistently growing a business, not having these like, let's just grow fast and then tumble down even faster. Heart-centered means you're growing a sustainable company that keeps growing routinely over time.
Right.
Right. And then also compassion, empathy was also part of it as well. But still being strong and having courage in who you are as a business owner and making those tough decisions because it's the right thing for your business.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know what I want to add to that. I don't know. I was the first thing that I thought of when you said heart-centered, and you were the way you can tell how important it is to you first and foremost. And you've done that deeper dive that I asked you about, right? And it's like, well, all these things come together. I love the empathy. By the way, I think empathy is a superpower that most people overlook, right? Empathy to me is about putting yourself in others' shoes to get a sense of how to better serve, right? Service is one of the core values that I think it's one of the highest forms of personal development, is being of service to others. There's charity, some faith, that sort of thing. But I love that. I love the deeper dive. I love the empathy really comes through there. I can feel it when you say it, right? So empathy, being a part of that heart-centered, doing some good for others, growing at a rate where you're more, and this is just my take on what I'm hearing, right? Where you're equally as concerned about the value that you're delivering and how that's perceived, as opposed to just trying to make as much money as you possibly can. Right?
100%.
Yeah.
And that's what I believe makes us different than everybody else in my industry. Is lots of in my industry are so self-driven towards, again, that just hit that goal. But I really believe heart-centered actually has been in my heart for 2 or 3 years to share as a core value. I didn't even realize it until you actually asked me a question and came in. And I was like, I've actually been kind of scared to share that because I thought it was, I didn't actually know deeper into what it truly meant, but I knew it was, I felt it was meant to be the true core value of TRM.
Right. Yeah. And I love it. I absolutely love it. I mean, we have to remember that core values aren't just something you're putting together so that you can post on your site or let you know. So my next question, and we might be skipping ahead here a little bit, but my next question is, first, do you communicate? Do you actually review your core values with your team? And how do you communicate them to the outside world? Right? How do people even know what your core values are, what the company's core values are? Because again, your personal core values can be different from the corporate values, right? Yeah. They may not be, but in my case, some of them are, some of them aren't, but is what it is. So imagine this: you are away on a business trip or whatever. One of your team has to make a decision. Has to make a decision. Like something came up. It's going to cost. Now, if it's a game-changing decision, they're going to wait to get in touch with you. But if it's something that's within their sphere of influence, their authorization to proceed, the core values should act as a guidebook for them. So with push comes to shove, and they have to make a call in the moment, and it's going to cost you. It's like, man, it's gonna cost us like $1,000 or whatever the number is, but I gotta make this call. This person's, if they make that decision based on the core values that you and your team have agreed are what this company is all about, they're probably making the right decision.
Agreed.
Right? They're probably making the right decision. So they are at the highest level an opportunity to communicate how you want your team and your company to execute and be perceived, to execute on the big goal, right?
Agreed.
The BHAG or the why or whatever you want to call it.
Agreed.
So yeah,
it's funny because it leads into my next core value share that in the very beginning of TRM, I felt I was more money driven, right? And which isn't me at all. I'm actually people driven. That's like when I think of Cayman and having people, all my people here, I get so excited. I'm like, bring together my people, give them a good experience, make them happy, bring an experience that you can't have in the US. That gets me fired up, which goes in my second core value of impact, is that impact to me means about empowering other people and helping them believe in themselves to impact and multiply their impact to other people. So
Absolutely.
I believe that I'm a multiplier, hence why it's TRM. It has a certain multiplier effect. Is that
Have you read the book Multiplier, by the way?
I have not, no.
Oh,
No, no,
I'm going to send it to you.
okay.
I'm going to send it to you. Liz Wiseman wrote the book Multiplier. You are a multiplier, my friend. And when you read this book, it's gonna change the way. There's that, and then of course the book Why. The book is actually called Start with Why by Simon Sinek. That is another game changer.
Okay, so I got to read both.
Yeah. Yes, you do.
So impact also to me means legacy, because one thing that I really believe is the most important part is creating lasting change around empowering other people. So when people come in TRM, the first thing I want to do is how can I impact this human so they can go not only grow their business, but make an impact in their family with their own clients, and they can multiply their effect to other people in positive ways. That's how I think impact is. So if I can be an impactor and a multiplier to one person like Peter, and he goes and impacts 1,000 more people, that to me is going towards my bigger goal of impacting 1 million fitness trainer and coaches in the world by way of one person can multiply others. That's how I see impact. It's really about a multiplication factor.
I think you said something that you may not have realized. So let's dive a little deeper here. So when we were talking about impact, you said why? When you're talking about impact, I'm going to ask you, well, why do you want to make a bigger impact? And you answered your own question already, so we'll skip there. Where you're talking about you want people to be able to make an impact in their businesses, in their personal lives.
Yeah.
You want to, and I'm not going to put words in your mouth. So why do you want to do that? Why do you want people outside of you to have?
Because when I grew up as a kid, I was the black sheep in a small town of 100 people. And I was,
I love this already.
And I remember a guy when I was 16 years old because I lifted weights when I was 12 years old. I couldn't do a push-up. I was bullied in school. My school is not very big. My class had 5 kids, right? But because I brought a water bottle to school, and it's grade 6, and food in a container, and I was skinny little runt, beginning weight training, I didn't have very many muscles. I was maybe 100 pounds soaking wet. So I was bugged about that. I was bugged for being kind of a loner. So I just, didn't have many like actual friends growing up. I was kind of like the guy that went to the farm, worked on the farm, worked with my uncle, with my grandfather, and did the cows. I love being on the farm. So where it's kind of going into this whole thing is that when I was 16 and I did bodybuilding for 4 years, right? And still getting last place in my first bodybuilding show, I had a dream of going to California, and being someone in the fitness industry. But I mentioned this to somebody who was my grandfather's, supporter with the farm that they did. And he laughed at me. He literally laughed at me and said, "What a complete joke. Get a real job." Like, I remember it like clear as day. Like, he was literally like so negative to me. And it tore me to pieces for like maybe a week. And I was like, no, I'm going to be somebody. I'm going to keep fighting at this, reading the magazines, going to the gym at 5 a.m. before I go to work on the farm afterwards, and do my second show and get 3rd place now out of 4 people, and just keep fighting away, And then I was 18. I, again, had no money. My family doesn't come from any money.
Now, doesn't that sound like a spatula story?
It's a spatula story.
Yours is a get off the farm story.
Yeah, get off the farm and go.
We're going to keep that. I know where I want to go with this. I can't wait till we get there. So carry on, please. So you're 18.
Yeah, and that's really where it came down. Is to me, it came into wanting to, because I never the person that kind of, again, I want to make it short, Pete, is my uncle was sort of the person that got me into weight training, right? And but I don't want to, again, get too left field. This could be a whole different side step.
That's okay. I
got me in bodybuilding, and I, because of him, I got into natural bodybuilding with my uncle. But then as things grew, I opened a natural bodybuilding federation when I was 21. They went to school for personal training, and actually helped him get this beverage company going, right? Which was actually his idea. I didn't actually want to do it. I just wanted to support him because I was a people-pleasing kind of person, right?
Right.
But all of a sudden, as I was all into this beverage company, he was starting to not support me anymore. And I felt I know he was supporting like don't do bodybuilding. It's unhealthy for you. You know, put more energy into the beverage company. Stop your bodybuilding federation, right?
Interesting. Okay.
And I felt like I didn't actually have someone believing in me anymore. You know, so when I asked about a multiplier, like I pour into people because I didn't feel I had someone genuinely pouring into me, genuinely for like supporting me. So I'm like, I believe in others and impact because I had to fight up and like push myself through. I remember my mom, when I left for California 18, my mom gave me a card and it said, I believe in you. But
How
the thing
powerful
is when I left, it's like, because my uncle had this big influence in the family, he like, kind of like told other people for his own benefit, like, you know, like bodybuilding is unhealthy. Don't do this. You know, like the visions I felt was always toward what he wanted.
Yeah.
You know,
Clearly uninformed, but you know,
correct.
I get it.
You know,
Yeah.
so I'm being very open right now. But I think
I
the
love
end of the
this.
day is, I honestly TRM was partly because I wanted to help these coaches, you know, who no one believed in them, or they didn't feel it was doable, or it was driven by the wrong intention to pour belief into them.
Yeah.
Let's go make a multiplying effect to help other people make a positive change because I thought I didn't get that.
100%. Well, listen, man, I can tell you unequivocally, easy for me to say, unequivocally, that you've made. I can see the difference that you've made in Jamie and her confidence and her ability to really recover from the pandemic with a gym that probably should have closed at the time, but I don't want to get off topic there. I know that she'll want me to thank you for everything that you've done for her and for our business. How do I say this? I will say people take action on one of two things. Mm-hmm. They either move towards pleasure or away from pain, right? That's at your most basic level, that's what happens. Okay. And it sounds to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but impact is a great word. Mm-hmm. Okay. It sounds to me like as we're diving deeper and deeper into this, you're trying to help people, trainers in your case, your specialty, create more joy in their life. Mm-hmm. And avoid the pain of what you had to go through and what most of us go through at one point or another as entrepreneurs. Move away from the pain of making of having a feeling of not having someone there that can help, that is willing to help because they want to. Yeah. Right. So I love the impact one. And I think there's more to be had even in that, but I know we've only got limited time here. So again, just keep asking why, and you'll get to the core of all that. Like impact, you want to help them grow their business and make money. Why do you want to do that? Right. So I love that. And that vulnerability that you just I'm going to call it right here, everyone. I'm telling you right now, that vulnerability that Mathew just showed is going to resonate more than you can possibly believe right now. People are going to see the authenticity right there. And authenticity is another superpower, right? In a world where, I'm going to be careful how I say this, in a world where authenticity seems to be less and less a virtue than it used to be. How's that? Seeing that and how much you actually care, I promise you, is going to make an impact. Going to make an impact.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that.
Use that word very specifically, right? So great. Do we have time for one more or no?
We have time for one more. So
let's talk about what's the next one you want to talk
about? Let's go to Elevate, which is a new core value, because of what we talked about. Now, Elevate, it's funny because the first slogan I had for TRM was I am limitless. And that really was something that really kind of stuck to my heart, because that was actually meant for me personally, to really propel me to fight through the adversity.
Maybe that is a personal value, right?
That's
That
exactly
one
it.
specifically.
Right. But elevate it to me is really about, I mean, maybe elevate is more of an impact. I'm not totally sure here, but elevate to me is, I mention the word elevate almost to every client I work with. I want to elevate you, elevate your business. We're going to elevate this. And it's about uplifting people in a way that's a positive, constructive way to make them better in all areas of their lives. As better humans, from a lead by example mindset, raising their standard, elevating them to make them better husbands or wives, or to their kids, or in their business as leaders, in the world that they, of course, do in their business. So elevate to me is about constant improvement. So you're always growing and you have a growth mindset towards always elevating yourself. You aren't stuck in like, I know everything. Ego takes over. No, elevate is about you come in with like questions, 2 ears, one mouth. And you want to like, that's something that I've always taken away, is like, I'm coming here to like, how can I learn from Pete or, Joe over here, and come in there and like be a student and then elevate.
100%. I mean, that one I think requires an even deeper dive, because I think you kind of got a sense from it right away. It sounds a lot like impact.
It does actually.
Right. What doesn't sound a lot like impact. And so let me ask you why you chose to separate that one out as opposed to make it one of the values that create impact. Is there a reason? There may not be. I'm asking.
When you say it right now, and I'm thinking about it from just explaining it, because impact had a lot of emotion to it. And then elevate, I feel, actually is saying a lot, actually is part of impact.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So what you did say, and I'm going to challenge you on this too, and we won't be able to get all into it today, but what I will say is, that's a very interesting realization. What seems to me that I'll ask you about, that you mentioned, was constant improvement, right? Constant improvement. And again, I'm not saying that's the specific phrase, but constant improvement is worth diving into. I'll ask you, when you think about constant improvement, why do you want to constantly improve yourself? Why do you want your team to constantly improve how they are able to deliver impact?
Because things are changing. The world is changing, and
Sure is.
I want to be innovating. And I believe that even as the clients we bring in typically are parents. So, which means they got kids. Those kids are growing. And as those kid goes from a 5-year-old to a 10-year-old, because you got kids, it requires different ways of communicating to these people, these young kids, and ways to deal with being a parent, being a business owner while running a business over here. So I'm looking at it as more of a psychological thing, and that keeping an open mind, because I've seen people come in TRM who are closed and say, I want to read all the books in the world, but they won't actually, they're just consuming. They aren't actually empowering or receiving to make themselves better. They're just consuming.
Right. So would it be fair to say that it's important for you to be constant, and your company, your team? When I say you, I'm talking about the royal we, not the individual. To be constantly improving in order to help your clients deliver impact.
100%. 100%.
So there's one I'll ask you to do a deeper dive into again. Thinking, and again, the word, the phrase, the feeling may not be, but it seems to me like you're onto something there, right? And again, communicating that, and your members, okay, knowing that you are constantly working on yourself, on your team, on your skill set, so that you are able to help them deliver more impact, I'm betting is probably going to resonate pretty well as well. So do it. I would say just do a little bit of a deeper dive on that one.
I'm going to ask you a question, buddy. This is actually really freaking good. So I would love, before you guys go on your vacation next week, if you're open to this, is just have one more part two. It can be half an hour, just tight and sweet, right? Where we can like kind of pick up where we left off. This is actually really helping me. And I actually am really grateful that we're having this combo, because in hearing your spatula story and kind of like your core values, my mind was already thinking like, oh shoot, like that was a perception. I got to like hear Pete. Now, as I'm sharing with you, I'm actually able to communicate as you ask me. Are you open to that?
Absolutely.
Awesome.
I really want to hit something here, because there's so much here. Have you ever, until today, did you ever think of we'll call it your farm story, as a spatula story?
Never thought of that as a spatula story, man. Wow.
There's your origin story. Every superhero has an origin story, buddy. Yours was getting off that farm. So you can tell how important it was to you, man. I'm really grateful that you shared that as openly and as raw as you did.
So I want to see. I'd love to see your story of your apartment, and the gravel pit. And I'll send you a picture of my town.
I'll see if I can find the picture. I'll send it to you. I'll see if I can find the picture. I'll send it.
It's cool because I in sharing it to you was super. Like it still kind of hits me. Like I remember the small boy in this small town. There's no cities around me, and I'm growing up on this farm and having dreams. I remember reading the magazines and like buying all the magazines with my spare money, because I opened my first business when I was 11 years old. I actually borrowed the money from my mom and dad to get a lawnmower. And I went around town and did lawns in town for $20 a head. And just like 11 years old with this weed whipper for $200 in the lawnmower. And that was my business when I was 11 years old. That's how I made my money. So I don't mean to go in left field, but I just, totally.
I love it, buddy. I love it. I mean, I'm telling you that this podcast will have impact, and you've shown your members how important it is for you to deliver impact to them, and that will say something. I promise you. That is what a real core value is. I love it. I love it. And if I may say so,
please.
If I may say so, I'm proud of you, and I believe in what you're doing.
Thanks, man. Thank you, man. I literally saw that in Cayman. I got goosebumps because I saw how you leaned in and were so invested in like learning and listening. And it was just, Alvin came to me in the car and said, man, Pete's something. Like he's got to speak at the next event. Even Isaac said like, dude, wow, Pete made me really think. And like when my team comes to me like that and says things about people they just met for the first time, that's rare, man.
Yeah, no, listen, man. And I wish I could say it's through some inherent, knowledge or genius or whatever. It's just that I've made more mistakes than you, and I've learned more mistakes from you. So if I can help you avoid those mistakes by sharing some experiences that I've had and how I've managed to improve, to think about the way I share things and help along the way, that's a win.
Thank you, man.
To use one of my values, that's a win.
Thanks, buddy.
Awesome,
I appreciate
buddy.
it very much, man. This is awesome.
Let's connect offline and we'll set up part two if you really want to. Absolutely.
Awesome, buddy. So let's definitely kind of leave her there. You got a meeting to go to. I got some stuff happening as well. This was 100%. Honestly just a really enriching conversation that I just really appreciate, man. So guys, this is Peter Ferrante. You can follow him online. Where can they find you online, Peter?
I'm probably most active on Instagram, although I'm not as active as I used to be. If you're interested in anything entrepreneurship or barbecue, Texas barbecue specifically, or bourbon, you'll find some of my stuff out there. But yeah, so it's at pistolpeteferrante.com. Same thing on LinkedIn. It's Peter Ferrante, at Peter Ferrante. you'll find me there. And then I'm not really very active on YouTube or any of the other. I don't even have TikTok, although I keep getting told that I should get on TikTok because it's worth it. I don't know. But Instagram's probably the best bet. Reach out to me there if you want to have a follow along, and look forward to it.
Thanks, Pete. Awesome. I appreciate you, buddy. You too, man.
We'll talk soon. All right. Have a great day.
Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate you. I know how hard it can be and tough it can be when you're feeling stuck, overwhelmed, or even burnt out in growing your business. I have been there, so I can relate. So before you wrap up, I want to offer you something special, free of charge, as my gift to you. It's our TRM Business Assessment. If you go to trainerrevenuemultiplier.com, you can get a copy of that. There's a link on the homepage to grab that assessment. This will give you clarity you need to see where your company is at right now, the bottlenecks you're facing or where you're possibly stuck in the business, and what steps you can take to move forward to grow it to the next level. And if you want to go one step further, we can book a call together and I can personally go over your results with you and give you a roadmap you can move forward with to grow to the next level. Head over to the website. Let's get some clarity together. I look forward to speaking to you soon, and I wish you an amazing day. Take care. Let's keep rocking.